Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, my name is Tori and today I am going to be handing out some book awards and I'm very excited for this video. Personally, I was not really a fan of the Goodreads Choice Awards this year. I wasn't really excited by any of the books that were nominated and just the whole thing felt a little bit messy to me. So because of that, I wanted to create some categories of my own and put some books into these categories. And really the purpose of this video is because at this point I already know the books that are going to be on my best books of 2020 list. Like a pretty good idea, maybe like give or take a few. There is one book that I am holding out for that I'm reading in December that I think might be able to squeeze its way into my top 10 list. But these books right here are still books that I thought were solid reads in 2020, and I really wanted to do something fun to highlight the authors, the characters, the setting, the underrated books of the year. So I thought what better way to do that than a book awards video. So there are 10 categories. Some of them are just kind of random, but I hope you enjoyed this video and let's get into it. First category that we have here is Best Supporting Character. So for this one I have Avasarala from the Expanse series, and specifically I'm talking about Caliban's War because she really had a chance to shine in this book. This is the second book in the Expanse series and I didn't love it as much as I enjoyed Leviathan Wakes last year. I love Leviathan Wakes, it was so good. In this one there's more perspectives, we get to see a lot more of the world, and I really thought though that a lot of the perspectives were starting to bog down the story in certain areas, but I mean overall it was still a solid book. I just didn't love it as much as book one. But Avasarala is an amazing character. She really gets to shine in this book. She's a politician on Earth and she actually works for the UN, and she's just she's so strategic and strong and calculating, and she just really makes a huge impression in this book. So I enjoyed every scene she was in. Honestly, Avasarala was the best part of this book. She's one of the best characters in the Expanse series in my opinion, so I did really enjoy her. So she was definitely one of the best characters that I've read in 2020. The next category that I have here is Best New to Me Author, and for this one I'm going to go with P.J. Lee Clark. So I believe one of P.J. Lee Clark's first big novellas was The Black God's Drums, and I never got around to reading that, but I did read The Haunting of Tramcar 015 this year. So in this we are following two detectives, two investigators, and they basically have to go and investigate this haunted tramcar in the city, and it takes place in this alternate Egypt, and it also takes place against the backdrop of women's suffrage. I had such a great time reading this. This was so enjoyable and it really made me want to go back and read The Black God's Drums. So that is on my list, but definitely P.J. Lee Clark was a standout author to me this year, so I highly recommend this. The next category that I have here is Best Debut Novel, and for this I have to give this to The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. Not only did I think this was a solid just 2020 read, this was a really solid debut novel. So in this we're following our main character Emmanuel, and she lives in this really rigid, really strict religious society, and everybody looks up and worships this man known as the Prophet. But Emmanuel, she never knew her mother, and at the beginning of our novel, Emmanuel, she ventures into the woods behind her community, and it's there that she meets these witches, and they present her with this journal that belonged to her mother. And once Emmanuel starts digging more into the journal, these really strange plague-like events start sweeping over the community that she lives in. So I really did enjoy this book this year. Alexis Henderson has such a great and poetic writing style, which I really enjoyed. So I definitely recommend The Year of the Witching. So the next category that I have here is Best Setting, and for this I am gonna have to give it to The Deep by River Solomon. So in this novel we're following our main character Yetu, and Yetu and her people, they all live underwater, and basically Yetu is known as the historian of her people, and Yetu alone holds on to all of the painful and really traumatic memories of African slave women who were thrown overboard. And so every year Yetu's people, they all get together in this kind of controlled environment, and Yetu releases the memories to her people to relive and to experience. But one year she just can't take it anymore and she completely bolts, and it's when she leaves her community that she starts to find friendship elsewhere and really has to come to the decision of whether she's going to go back home or not. So I did really enjoy this. I thought the setting was incredible. This book itself is just absolutely amazing. I did mention that this is a novel by River Solomon, but it's also with Daveed Diggs, William Hudson, and Jonathan Snipes, and I definitely recommend this. The next category is Best Cover, and for this, it wasn't a competition. I am not really one to fawn over covers anymore. I can appreciate a nice cover like everybody else, but I'm not like, oh my god, the cover is so beautiful. But this cover is absolutely beautiful. So in this novel, we're following a couple of characters, but our primary one is Serapio. And from a young age, Serapio has been told that one day he will travel to the holy city of Tova, and he travels there during their winter solstice event. Also happens to be a solar eclipse, and these two events together really will just kind of bring about destruction, and Serapio is destined to kind of be in the center of all of that. So we're really getting this kind of journey narrative throughout the whole story. We're getting Serapio's perspective as he's traveling to this holy city, and we're also getting the perspective of the captain that he's traveling with. So everybody just has a really great and rich background, and I love the world building in this. So I definitely recommend you check this out as well. But this cover is gorgeous, so this wins the best cover award. So the next category that I have is best sequel, and for this is actually kind of strange to think that I only just read this in 2020. It feels like I read it last year, but I didn't. And that is Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. So last year I read Scythe. I read Scythe, the first book, in December, and Scythe ended up making the top 10 list of the best books of 2019 last year. And I turned right around in January and ended up finishing Thunderhead. I think I finished Thunderhead like January 1st of this year. So it definitely still qualifies as a 2020 read, but it just feels so long ago now at this point because I binge read the Arc of a Scythe trilogy like back to back to back. So I really love this trilogy. I have a full review of it. I will leave it somewhere for you to go check out. It's completely spoiler free. This is a young adult dystopian novel, and the whole premise of it is that people live in a society where they can't really die anymore. The only way you can be killed is if a scythe kills you. And so we have our two main characters, and they become apprentices to a scythe, and they basically learn the art of taking a life. But it's just so much more complicated than that. It gets so detailed, and it's actually really dark. So I just enjoyed this whole trilogy, and this is actually like this. I love Thunderhead. I flew through this. I could not put it down. So this was an amazing, amazing sequel to the first book. So the next category is best surprise. And for this, I was kind of thinking of like what book just really kind of, I wasn't expecting to blow me away, but just I ended up really, really enjoying. That's The Girl with All the Gifts. And this is a post-apocalyptic zombie novel, but it stands out so much from the rest of its subgenre. It's just so much more than that. So we are following a couple of characters in this, but our main one is Melanie, and she actually is a zombie. And at the start of the novel, everything just, you know, kind of explodes really quickly, and Melanie ends up kind of traversing the world with a few adults, and a lot of them are like military personnel sort of people. But as they're navigating through this world and we're getting the story from Melanie's perspective, you really just start to realize that Melanie has more humanity than the world that she is like living in now. This was definitely a surprise read. This one has been staying with me all year. I read this earlier in 2020, and I just still think about this book. So the next category is best international book, and for this I had to go with The Queue, and this is by Basma Abdel Aziz, and this is a work of Middle Eastern literature. This is a dystopian novel, and it takes place in this world where there's this entity known as the Gate, and people actually line up in long queues because they have to go up to the gate and like ask it for just really basic things. People are in the line to ask the gate for like prescriptions that they need, medical attention that they need. But at the center of the story, we have one character who is in the queue, and as the book progresses, you learn the backstory of this character, why they need to be in line, and you also learn that the gate is trying to do some really shady things to kind of prevent this person from getting up to the gate to ask it questions. This was a really fascinating read. I definitely recommend this. It's a really bold look at just censorship, and it's kind of scary in a lot of places. So this definitely wins the award for best international book that I read this year. And then finally, I actually really love this category that I came up with. The last category is the best book that I have not read yet. So for this one, I was thinking like, what is a book that I did not get around to reading in 2020, but if I had read it, I think I really would have fallen in love with it. And for this, I'm gonna go with The Bone Season, and this is by Samantha Shannon, and this is the first book in the Bone Season trilogy. I really don't know what it is about. I actually have all the books on my shelf. I own the entire trilogy and have not read it yet. I usually don't do things like that, but for some reason, there's just something about the the synopsis and the sound of this book, and just from what I've been hearing about it and from people whose reviews that I really enjoy watching and who have similar tastes as me, really love this book. So there's just something about it that I feel like I would really love this series. So I did not get around to reading the Bone Season yet, but it is definitely a 2021 goal of mine next year. But I have a good feeling about this book. I don't know. Can anybody else relate to that? Like, is there a book that you haven't read that you just know is gonna be good? So that is it, you guys. That is the video. I hope you all had fun watching this. This was a lot of fun to film and a lot of fun to kind of go through all of the categories and come up with the books for each one. So currently I am kind of just playing around with the logistics of like the best books of 2020 list, like when I'm filming it, like I'll just the number order everything, because I actually like to rank my books. So I'm gonna leave you with something really fun. Well, fun for me maybe, but let me know down in the comments which book you think might be in the top 5 of my 2020 reading list. So I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.